We've got some things to do today. We're going to just briefly talk about your ADA paper because we did that in depth last time. We're going to, thank you. We're going to finish up chapter 6, and we're going to talk a little bit about your midterm assignment. So let's kind of take it in this order. We'll talk about the ADA, we'll talk about the midterm assignment, then we'll get into chapter 6, and then don't forget, for Tuesday's class next week, we're going to embark on chapter 7, which is all about labor and employment, big area. We'll spend 3 full days talking about 1 day on chapter 7, but then 2 days on chapter 8. Note that, just to put it in context for you, those 2 chapters are divided thusly. Chapter 7 is about the legal aspects of labor and employment up to the point of hiring. So recruiting, assessing, right? Bringing them on board. And then chapter 8 is about the legal aspects of people working, right? And then termination. So there's so much there, we broke it up into 2 chapters. So that kind of hopefully puts that in a little context for you. So we'll be doing that on Tuesday. The following Thursday, we will not be having class. That's a day for you to get started with your team member on your papers. We won't be holding in class. It's up to you to get together, but we've given you that time to work on that, right? It's just absolutely a coincidence that it's the Thursday before spring break, but yeah, it's one of those things. All right, everybody good with where we're headed and what's going on? Okay, just so you know, when you come back from spring break, you've got a post due on chapter 8 that Monday night before Tuesday's class. So just don't get too carried away with your tequila over spring break, and we'll be good to go. Who likes tequila? Those of you that like tequila, how many of you are old enough to drink? Oh, okay, I just thought I'd check. All right.
Tomorrow's my birthday.
Is it?
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Turning 22.
22. Does your generation still get just berserk at 21?
Yeah. I went to New Orleans for Mardi Gras.
Yeah, okay, well, that was kind of, but I mean, no, aren't you guys the ones that go out and just get totally blitzed? And
When you turn 21, how it's fun.
I'm sure that's everybody.
oh, you can't?
You can't get in trouble when you're 21.
Okay.
I keep get out of jail free cards in my wallet.
Get out of jail free card. That's not good. I don't want to hear about that. All right.
Actually, do.
Hey, Rachel. Okay, so that's where we are, right? Everybody's good with what we're doing, how we're headed, and that's good. The Americans with Disabilities Act, I thought the papers were terrific. Spencer thought the papers were terrific. And so you can pick those up when you leave. Your grades have been posted. But I appreciate the hard work. And from our discussion last time, it sounded to me like you learned a lot about that. Listen, a couple of things going on. Just to bring what we talk about in here to real life, I've been asked to get involved. Turn this off. I've been asked to get involved in some litigation around a woman who was going to a large hotel property. I can say this on here. Anyway, on a large hotel property, and no, I can't. And she had a walker. And the walker, remember we were talking about the ramp and how it needs to be smooth. Do you understand it and how we're looking for it? And the biggest challenge you're going to find is getting people typically from the parking lot to the ramp. Right? Because there's that connector. And people don't pay attention to that connector, but that's where the challenges arise. It's got to be flush, or pretty close to flush. Does everybody understand what I mean by that? Smooth. One can't be higher than the other. Well, this apparently was about 3/4 of an inch higher where she was headed than what she was on. And the legs of that walker did what? And it caught there, and she went back. Somebody was pushing it, kind of, anyway, a device. But she went back, hit her head, and died. So I'm sharing this stuff with you because what we talk about in here is really important. You guys will be responsible for these things, and you've got to think about it from a legal safety and security perspective. All right? On another matter, I had Spencer. Well, let me wrap this. So the ADA, good work. I
hope you have a much better feel for that law now. Is that a fair assumption? By doing that exercise. And greater empathy for people with disabilities. All right. I'm going to ask Spencer to post 2 links to an interview that CBS News did of a woman. This one I can get.
That CBS News did for a woman, with a woman. It was on the CBS Morning Show last week. Anybody see it? Any of you watch television? How many of you have cable? 2? That's crazy. See, if you'd have asked my generation who had cable, everybody would have raised their hand. Why don't you have cable? Expense?
Cable's like an hour now.
We have Netflix, HBO.
Did you just say our Netflix?
Yeah, he just did.
I'm just kidding. I got it. I'm having fun. So, I mean, it hurt me, but I got it. It was funny. All right, so, no, it's not Netflix.
I mean, we can like stream stuff like illegally too.
That's not where I was going. But I mean, you don't get news. How many of you watch news? You, on Reddit. You read it on Reddit? Is that what you do?
They can watch news on for what I know.
Yeah. CNN app, and you just glance and browse and do that? Huh. Actually, I personally, a lot of people I know have checked out of the news, and I think that's a good thing. I'm kind of a news junkie, so I tend to hang on to it, which is not a healthy thing necessarily.
I only watch it at afternoon, like at 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, did any of you happen to watch any of Michael Cohen's testimony yesterday? Any of you?
No, but
So, raise your hand if you saw a little bit of it. Just a little bit of it. Okay, I mean, that's a big day in our country. I mean, that's...
they showed some stuff on the news about that. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out why haven't they started the proceedings of impeachment.
All right, we're not going to bring that up in here, but it's a fair question that you've asked, and we'll leave that at that. All right, now, so anyway, I'm going to ask Spencer to post 2 links to CBS News. Are you familiar with the morning shows, these morning shows? You are really? Okay. In any event, there was a case. Let me give you these facts, just so you can see. This is just what we were talking about. There was a hotel in Iowa. It was an Embassy Suites. So who's the franchisor of an Embassy Suites? Hilton is the broad umbrella. They own the Embassy Suites brand, right? So Hilton is the franchisor, and then you have an ownership group that bought the franchise for an Embassy Suites from Hilton. So the owner is the franchisee. They hired a third-party management company called John Q. Hammonds. They operate a lot of hotels around the country. This case brings everything together. So there was a gentleman's not the right word. There was a man staying there. He's a Diamond member. Who works for Hilton in the hotel in the class? You work for Hilton. You have worked for Hilton. Diamond members are the top elite echelon in their affinity program. What's an affinity program? Loyalty program, membership program, right? Okay, so when the people come and they're these Diamond members or the elite of the elite, do businesses tend to give them special treatment?
Yes.
Hold on to that thought. So, this guy is staying at the hotel, and there's a bar and restaurant attached to this hotel. A woman stays at the hotel on business. She goes to the bar. She sits at the bar to have dinner. She has dinner. While she's at dinner, this Diamond member goes and sits next to her and starts chatting her up. He's a little intoxicated. She basically just talks to him a little bit, and he's kind of aggressive. And finally she says, "I've got to go," and she does. No big deal, right? She goes back the next night to sit at a table. When she's at the table, the guy comes in again. He's a little lit up. I think the evidence is over the course of the night he had 6 beers and 4 or 5 shots. Problem? Too much alcohol, right? Do hotels need to be concerned about how much alcohol they serve? But their defense, what do they try to say all the time to justify the overservice of alcohol? They're staying at the hotel. You've got to remember, and we'll talk more about this, it's not just drunk driving you're worried about. How many of you, when you've had too much to drink, have done something really stupid? Well, all right then. People do dumb things, right? So you've got to be cautious. You serve alcohol responsibly no matter what the context. That's your job. Got it? All right, so the guy's lit up. He goes and sits down at the table and is being assertive and aggressive again. Her 2 friends come and sit down, and they finally run the guy off. She goes and gets in the glass-encased elevator, and he gets on with her. She goes up to her room and gets off. Somehow he figured out which room she was in. I didn't read all the facts carefully to understand how he finagled that. But he does that. Then he goes down to the desk. And he says, "You gave me the wrong key to my room. I really need room so-and-so," which is her room. Oh, no, is right. What did the front desk do? Gave him the key without doing what? You don't give a key without checking an ID. I don't care if it's the president of Hilton. You don't do it. Do you understand? And there was a manager on duty and there was a front desk person. They both knew the guy. And their testimony was, "Well, I thought she checked." And the other one said, "Well, I thought she checked." It didn't appear that way to me. It just looked like, this is a Diamond member, give him what he wants. All right, now that's bad, right? So he goes up to her room. And he uses the key. But what has she done? She's deadbolted and used a security latch, which is exactly what you're supposed to do. Anytime you're in your hotel room, you always utilize the security tools that are available for you. You don't get into an Uber without checking the license plate, the make, model, and color of the car. You ask the driver, "What is your name?" You don't go, "Is your name Stanley?" Right? Because then all they have to do is say yes. You ask them what their name is and match it up. If any one of those doesn't match up, you don't do what? You don't get in the car. I'm trying to save your life here. Now go back to this hotel. So this guy, now listen, this is a suite hotel because people say, "Well, why didn't she wake up?" You know, when you go into an embassy suite, there's a living room and then you go through another door and you go into the bedroom. He can't get in. So what does he do? No. Keep thinking. He didn't call the manager. He calls the manager, but he says, "Can you send maintenance up to my room? I'm having trouble with my lock." So maintenance shows up. And what does he say? He says, "Hey, my girlfriend locked me out." Nobody bothers to check. What's the maintenance person do? Everybody in the room knows that hotels keep tools that can unlatch the deadbolt and the emergency from outside. And the security bar from the outside. It just slips through the door and pops it. Because if you're in there having a heart attack, we need to get in there, right? So that's not uncommon. What is uncommon is the maintenance guy goes, "I'll be right back." Goes and gets the tool, unlocks it, leaves. And this guy goes in, and of course you can have sexually assaulted the woman. So I bring it up because the case just settled a week ago, and so the news agencies were kind of going. But here's the thing. This comes back to what we were talking about. If that happened to you, who are you going to sue? Wait, you can't just say that. After all we've talked about, you can't just say the hotel. Who's the hotel? You don't want to sue the bar. You don't want to sue the individual people. There's no dough there. Well, come on. Think this. Stop. Stop. Think about what we've talked about. Then answer. Cindy.
The management company, whoever does the day-to-day operations.
Okay. What does liability follow? Say it out loud, Ian. Control, right? Who had control of the day-to-day operations? The management company. So they're first on your list. All right. Who else are you going to sue? You're going to sue them, the person that did it. Very good. Who else? You're going to sue the ownership group, alleging what?
That they hired a negligent.
That's right, that they didn't do their due diligence, right? And what types of things would you look to try to prove?
With them, kind of like not paying attention to like who they hired as a management group and like the fact that they weren't keeping up with like Hilton standards.
Yeah, you'd want to look at that, but would you also want to look at that history? Had they ever been sued before for something similar? Right? And then who else are you going to sue? Hilton. Right? Alleging what?
That it's their brands that they're responsible for all their.
Right. Right? And so you're saying, hey, the public sees this, right? But it's an interesting argument. And it's starting to be happen more and more. But the judge in this case, which happens in a lot of these cases, the judge threw out the case against Hilton and the ownership group. Why?
Because they weren't in direct control of the situation.
Exactly right. Because they were not in direct control of the day-to-day safety and security decisions going on at the hotel. Now, if you're the lawyer representing the plaintiff, the woman that was injured, what are you going to argue about that?
Because it's their property and they're financially responsible for that property.
Yeah, you're going to argue, you're going to make those arguments, right? That they get revenue from this, so they should be held responsible. And what else? Don't franchisors, don't they participate in some of the standard setting and choices that hotels and restaurants make? Around what? Marketing, customer care, design, right? They do those things. But when it comes to legal safety and security things, what do? They back up. It's a hands-off because they don't want what? They don't want the liability. So it's a real interesting situation in our country, the way the judges have been and juries have been deciding and the way the legislation is set up. It's a fascinating area of the law. And I just want you to realize the stuff we talk about in here happens, and it's a very practical side of the industry that you're thinking about getting into. And I want you to realize how important this stuff is. That should have never happened to that woman. Never in a million years would I have considered a scenario where all of those protocols, overservice of alcohol, give the key without an ID, and the maintenance person taking that tool, I would have never, ever thought that could have happened. With all the training and discussion that we've had around that, right? I was just blown away. And you should be too. And don't ever let that happen at your hotel. People depend upon you, right? You've got to take that seriously, whether it's a restaurant or a hotel. Got it? All right, so I'll have Spencer post the two links if you're interested in seeing that Spencer's. Oh, I'll talk more about it. I'll send you the one. All right. ADA, let's talk about your midterm assignment. Did everybody get your team member? Did you look and find out who it is? Okay, well, let's look real quick. Let's find out who it is, and let's match you up real quick. Who went to the rodeo? Nobody went to the rodeo? What's up? You guys are home studying?
I go today.
You're going?
Today.
Oh, today. Good. Anybody go to the basketball game? Oh, no, it wasn't here, was it? Hey, did you guys see the note I think Spencer posted about ESPN coming to town?
Yeah,
Who's going to go?
Saturday.
Anybody going to go? You guys are cracking me up. What do you guys do? You gotta work. Yeah, I work too. You guys need a life. You got to get out and go do some things. Have some fun. Take advantage of the stuff on campus. How many of you have been inside the Opera House on campus? Raise your hand. Oh my gosh, one person. 2 people. All right, do you have your teammate? Can you find your teammate? All right, take 2 minutes to find your teammate. If you need help, raise your hand. You can get up. Look at it. Put your name tag up so people know who you are. If everybody gets up, then nobody will be sitting in their seat. Trade info so you can connect. Are you on the app?
No, I have.
Go to Spencer. Who are you looking for, Ian? Who? Maeve? Peyton. Where's Peyton? Peyton. Not here? Has she been in here? Hang on to that. If she's not here by Tuesday, you let me know. Okay. Who? Ashley? Ashley. Yeah. Did you find her? All right. Hey, who knows Ashley? Oh, Liliana knows Ashley. Is she in the class? She's dropped the class? Oh, she's just not here today. If she's not here by Tuesday, let me know. Can you send an email? You can send an email through Blackboard.
Yeah, you can.
Send an email through Blackboard. Raven sits right down here, but she's not here today. She sits on that corner down there. Usually, you can send her an email. Okay. Or him an email, or whoever it is. Are you 2 partners? No, you're holding your hand in case who is your partner? Gabrielle? Yeah, 1 second. Gabrielle who? Gabrielle. Not this Gabrielle. Another Gabrielle. She's not here today. So send her a note. Oh, Rachel, did you meet Alec? He's straight back. Okay, got 2 down. It's like concentration. Gabrielle, who are you looking for? 1 second. Catherine who? Catherine G. Catherine, did you guys meet? Success. Catherine G. All right, you'll have to check on Tuesday. Let's do it again. And send them an email in the meantime. Yes. Who? Hayden? Hayden. Hayden. There's Hayden. There you go. All right, you're connected. See how that was gone? We should open Match.com on the side. Hey, remind me of your name. Ron. Stand up for me, Ron. Turn around so everybody can see your T-shirt. Just hold on, Sima. Just do it. No, turn around like you're on a modeling thing, right? Yeah, come on. All right, pronounce that name. Yeah. Now, here's the thing I want you to realize. This is why it's important to have an open mind and to listen to other perspectives. When I was getting my master's at Texas Tech, I took an advertising, because my master's in communications, right? So I took an advertising class. And our job, we had a project to design a product and create a marketing scheme for it, right? So I created a product. It was a fashion product. And it was going to be called Balenciaga at the time was a young designer just starting out. And I thought, man, that's great. And the fashion was really eclectic, and I thought, Now you got to keep, this is about 4 years ago. Yes. And so, and then I thought, who better than to be the spokesperson for a brand? At this time, you've got to realize this was in the 70s, right? Then Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Do you know who that is?
No clue.
Yeah, you do. Seriously? Jackie Kennedy? Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, the wife of John F. Kennedy, the 41st president. One of the most famous women ever in the world. Really? You guys, Reddit is failing you. Okay, all right. So anyway, I thought, well, that'd be great, right? She'd be perfect. So I turn it in, and the guy writes on my paper, the professor, he writes on my paper. And you got to remember, this is in West Texas, which is a little slow. One of the reasons I said, I got to get out of here. The guy writes my paper. He goes, I can't even pronounce this word. He says, nobody will buy a product like this. And he said, and you'll never get somebody like Jackie Onassis to be the spokesperson. I thought, well, that's pretty short-sighted. He didn't have anything good to say about the concept, right? And so, and he gave me a really poor grade. And I thought, huh. But my point is that it really was a good idea. And people like Jackie Onassis are spokespeople for brands all the time now, right? Right? I mean, yeah. Who'd have thought that, I know she's an actress, but never mind, doesn't matter. My point is, don't be closed-minded. Be open-minded. Be creative. Let other people be creative. Just because you haven't thought of it doesn't mean it's not a good idea. Yeah? I wish you guys would have been. Who's in the communications class? Queenie? Who else is in there? No? Anybody else in the communications class? Queenie, will you take just a minute and, if you don't mind, share with the class do you know who, if I say, I think her name is Huda? Girl that wears the scarf.
Oh, yeah.
Can you share with the class what happened to her? Do you recall?
Yes. She was just out for groceries, right? And on the parking lot, as she was putting her groceries into the car, this lady just came out of nowhere and started yelling at her, saying, why are you here? You shouldn't be here. And we were learning how to try to be calm about the situation. That's exactly what she was. She was like, don't worry, I'm about to leave. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to do anything. Please calm down. And the lady took her bag and like smacked her across the face, and so she had like some kind of mark for days. But she eventually did leave.
Yeah, but the woman assaulted. Give it 1 second.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? This is building maintenance. We're performing a test of the fire alarm system. Please disregard all audible and visual signals unless otherwise notified. Thank you.
You guys were ready to leave, weren't you?
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? This is building
We might as
maintenance.
well leave.
We're performing a test of the fire alarm system. Please disregard all audible and visual signals unless otherwise notified. Thank you.
Thank you, Queenie. That was a great recitation of what occurred. All because she had a scarf wrapped around her head. Right? So my point is, we get so caught up in our beliefs and our thoughts that when we filter everything through this egocentric lens that we have, right? I'm just sharing with you, understand that the world is made up of all kinds of people. And you've got to realize that you guys are going to come in contact with them and be responsible for many of them. And be open to their creativity and their ideas and the way they choose to live your life. That's not your choice. You get to live your life, right? It's kind of controlling to think that I get to live my life and Jill's or Jocelyn's, right? That's not it. So be open to that. That was just frightening to me that she did that. I told her, I said, I think you should have taken that scarf and showed her what it was really for. Right? And see, here's the thing. How many of you have ever personally experienced something like that? A little bit. Yeah, but if you haven't, it's hard to have empathy for that, right? But I want you to. I want you to realize those things happen. It was hard for her to share it too. But it was good. Thank you, Queenie. All right. So anyway, things that we talk about in here really happen. So there you go. All right. Now, let's talk about your midterm. You have your partners. At least most of you do, right? So let me explain something to you. I want to be very clear about this. On your first paper, the internal memo that you wrote about alpha and HOI and zebra. Do you remember that? All right. Now, this is an intensive writing class, right? That's the way it's billed at the university. You've got to write 3,000 words and an opportunity to rewrite in one assignment. So I gave you the opportunity to rewrite, those of you that needed it, on that first assignment, right? So, and I graded, actually I gave, assuming that all of them come up to speed, which they are so far with the rewrites, then everybody will get full credit for that assignment, okay? Because I don't assess a grade when there's a rewrite involved. It's just not fair to everybody. Now, having said that, on the ADA papers, the grades were excellent. But again, we're pretty lenient. We caught a few spelling mistakes and things like that. Because you're getting used to what we're doing and how we're going down the path, right? All good. But now, with this paper, my expectation I'm just trying to get your attention. This is important. My expectations are very high. There are 2 people working on this paper. Should I expect more? Okay. And look, let me explain something to you. Do not, if Ian and I were working together, do not say, Ian, you write the first half and I'll write the second half. Sounds like a ride at the rodeo. Do not do that. I want you to use an e-collaboration method. Is everybody familiar with track changes? I did. That's why you're familiar with it. But you know how to use it. Just go to Open Word, go to the top toolbar, click on Review, right? And then just click on Track Changes. And that will activate Track Changes. And then that way, if you start to write something and you send it to somebody and they open it up in Word and they have track changes on, it'll put your work in a different color than their work. You can write notes in the margin. It will show what's been deleted, what's been added. That way I can see the relative contribution of the teammates to the work, right? Now, you can also do that in Google Docs, which is probably preferred. Yes? It could be. Stephanie?
The whole button on it's not on, if you're on Google Docs, it's not like on file review or whatever. It's not on one of those, but it's on the actual toolbar where the text box, text sizes is, if that makes sense. To the far right.
That gives you different options for font things.
Yeah, it's a little pencil and you click on it and that's the edit tool and it says suggesting, not suggesting, and then something else and you click on suggesting and it makes everything kind of just track changes.
Look for the pencil icon.
But both people have to click it, I think, or else it won't. It'll track mine if I click it, but let's say my partner doesn't track yours.
Thank you, Stephen. That's very helpful. Let me give you a thought. It's much easier to do it in Google Docs, assuming you can figure out how, because you can see the real-time change. So if you can't get together, and look, it's not an excuse that my partner and I couldn't meet up. You got to learn how to collaborate today without meeting face-to-face. You've got lots of ways today to collaborate without meeting face-to-face. Google Docs, telephone, Zoom, FaceTime. You got all kinds of ways to do this. Does everybody get it? That's one of the things I want you to walk away with, because more and more people are working remotely, and you have to learn how to work with people that aren't looking you in the eye. Somebody has a hand up. Cindy.
You can also do it through Word, because you, on top, on the Word, on the panel on top, it has the share. You click on it and you invite people and you can use that same.
I was not aware of that. So how many of you know that? Now you know it. So that's very cool. So let's try that as well. So we can do it in real time?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you invite them, and then it shows up the same doc on everybody's computer. Genius.
If y'all want to do it together, you have to like upload it to the cloud and then do it that way. Both of them have to be in the cloud, and you could do it at the same time.
Okay. Very cool. So another way to work together. I need to use that. Thank you. All right. So, but I also want to make you aware that I'm expecting a lot from these papers. I'm expecting the research to be really well done and thorough. I'm expecting the grammar and spelling to be spot on. I'm expecting you to follow the prompt carefully. Now, some of you didn't do that with the first assignment. You didn't read it carefully. You need to read this carefully and give and provide the information that I'm looking for.
Have your attention, please. This is building maintenance.
Now we're
Concludes
finished
the
testing,
testing
yeah.
of the fire alarm system. Thank you.
Now, if they repeat that, I'm going to go have a talk with somebody. All right. Yeah.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? This is building maintenance. That concludes the testing of the fire alarm system. Thank you.
All right. Spencer, did we find the grading rubric?
Yes, sir. It's on.
Okay. So I realized last couple of days we referenced the grading rubric for this assignment, but it wasn't posted. It is there now. It's in the midterm folder. So look, follow that and make sure you hit all of those targets. Got it? My bad. Okay. Listen, if you do something wrong and your CEO calls you out on it, don't say my bad. But I get it. All right. All right. Any questions about the midterm, the paper that I'm looking for? Remember, we don't have exams in here, so this is your chance to demonstrate what you've learned and your writing capability. Don't forget, there's lots of writing resources. There's a track changes PowerPoint also. I think it's there, so you can check that out if you need help. Or you can just look on YouTube. You guys are the ones that get out and about, right? You can figure this out. Cindy?
Do you want us to send a paper with track changes, or?
Yeah, it's all laid out in the prompt, what I want you to do and how you do it, okay? What I want attached to the paper and everything. All right. If you have questions, though, about it as we go forward, but you've got plenty of time to do it. But I do want you to start now. That's why I'm giving you the day on Thursday. I know some of you guys are going to be off on a cruise, but you don't have to be face-to-face with people. And look, here's the thing I want you to realize. This is a challenging paper to write. The concepts are a little complex and a little complicated. You're going to need to spend some time with this. Don't push this till the end. This is a big part of your grade. Give it the time and attention it deserves. Everybody good? All right. Enough for that. Let's talk about Chapter 6. We left off talking about buying a house, basically. Do you remember? And I think Andrew was buying a house, and I think Natalie was loaning the money. Does that sound right? Okay. Hi. let's start over. I mean, that stuff that we talked about is important. I'm going to come back to it to re-emphasize to it. But I think it might be helpful if we start in a different approach. Let's say everybody in here is the bank. And I have a Rolex watch. And the price of oil goes down from $100 a barrel to $50 a barrel. I can't pay my bills. But I've got an asset. I've got a $25,000 Rolex watch. So I'm going to take it to your bank, and I'm going to say, can you loan me $25,000 against this watch? And what are you going to say? Chris is going to say no. Why not?
Because if the watch is worth $25,000, I mean that's what they can make for it. So why would they loan you money for the same amount? It doesn't make any sense.
The total amount, right? Because if something goes wrong, the watch could value. Yeah, the watch could get value for less. It could depreciate over time, right? Okay. Will you lend me $10,000 against a $25,000 watch? Say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, are you just going to give me the 10 grand?
No.
What do you want? Okay, you want interest. So you give me 10,000. You're going to loan me 10,000 plus interest, right? All right. Is that it? We need a promissory note. I promise to pay you back $10,000 at $100 a month. Yeah, $10,000, 10% interest over 3 years, or whatever that is a month. Fair enough? Is that it?
You want proof it's worth $25,000?
You want an appraisal? Okay, so you want an appraisal on the watch to prove that it's true.
You need to file it.
Ariana says we need to file it. File what?
Your agreement? Or the proof of ownership?
Here's the question. It's not the proof of ownership, it's the proof of my claim. You're, the bank's, what we call a security interest into what? Into the watch, right? You've loaned money against this watch. That gives you a security interest, or what we call a lien, into this watch. Now, what's the simplest way? Ariana says you file it, which we talked about before with real property. And we have a mechanism to do that with, is the watch personal property or real property? Personal. Why does the filing work really well with real property?
Division.
Because what, Cindy?
You have like a division in every county or so that.
We do. We've got that division. But what else makes real property different than personal property? You can't hold it. Well, I can't hold it. And more importantly to the bank, I can't move it. I can't dig up 2 acres of land and put it in Arizona. Right? It's not going anywhere. So we know that that land is there, and so those records in that county we know are going to be for every piece of land in the county, right? That land is not going anywhere. If Chris loans me the 10 grand on the watch, with a security interest in the watch, as Ariana pointed out is important, what can I do with the watch? I can take it, sell it, leave with it, give it to my kids, do anything with it, right? What's the easiest way for Chris to perfect his security interest in the watch? Keep it. He keeps it. He puts it in the safe. Then when I pay the loan back, what do I get back? The watch. What do we call the watch in that situation? Collateral. It's the collateral. It's the value we're putting up to secure the loan. Okay? That's important. But that's called perfecting your security interest, right? Do you see why it's perfecting? Can anybody get that watch until I get my money paid back? As long as I have it. Nobody's going to get it. I have perfected my security interest. When Natalie loaned money to Andrew, how did she perfect her security interest in Andrew's land? Well, he put the deposit down, but how do you tell the world, how did Chris tell the world that I'm owed money on this watch and you can't have it until I'm paid?
It's on paper and filed it.
How did Chris do it? He kept it. He put it in his vault, right? So if I go and say, hey, I want to sell you a watch, what do they have to do in order to get my watch? They got to go see Chris. And they got to pay Chris back the 10 grand, right? Then Chris will give him the watch. But he's not getting the watch without the 10 grand and the interest, right, Chris? So if Natalie, can Natalie take possession of Andrew's land? She can't, right? How do we demonstrate possession of or ownership of land? Deed. Right? So, Andrew, if Natalie's going to loan Andrew money to buy the land, Andrew's going to get the deed because he's taken the money. Remember I told you to go to closing? The title company? Natalie sends her money. Andrew puts up his 10%, the down payment, right? You pay the $100,000 to the seller, and the seller gives Andrew what? This is important. You guys are going to be doing this in your life. You have to understand this. You're going to be doing it personally. You're going to be doing it commercially. What documents is Natalie going to make Andrew sign? Hold on. Let's take it one step at a time. She's loaning him money. The bank is, right? So what does he have to sign? Just like you did for the watch. Promissory note. Right? That lays out the terms of the debt. $90,000 over 10 years, so many monthly payments of this at this interest rate, and what happens if he defaults? You can foreclose on the land. That's all spelled out. Okay, so you get a promissory note, but Andrew has the deed. So what happens is somebody mentioned it yesterday, you mentioned the word mortgage, right? We typically use the term mortgage when you're dealing with personal homes, residential homes. Mortgage is your promissory note, but it's also it references another document which is called a deed of trust. So when Andrew gets the deed, he turns around and assigns his interest in it to Natalie's bank. It's called a deed of trust. I'm entrusting this deed to you during the time that I am going to be paying you back, so that when I do pay you back, what happens? You give it back to him, or you release your lien or claim against the property, right? That's the term. In the case with Chris, once I pay the debt back, the $10,000 back to Chris, what's he going to do? He's going to give me the watch back. Do you see how it's the same thing? It's just we can't do it with land, right? We can't do it with buildings and land. So we do it with personality. But look, do you guys see that relationship with Chris is just what a pawn shop does? It's exactly what a pawn shop does. They're just, when you go to a pawn shop with that banjo that your grandfather left you, and you say, hey, give me $50, they go, sure, give me the banjo. But they're not going to give you $50 on your promise about the banjo, right? They're going to perfect their security interest in the banjo. When you pay it off, you get it back. That's what Natalie's doing. Now, we left out one step, though. When Natalie gets that deed of trust from Andrew, who all knows at that point that Natalie has an interest in the land that Andrew now owns? Who knows about that? Just you, exactly. Just you. But that's not good enough for Natalie, because Natalie, I trust you, Andrew, but not that much. And I want to make sure you don't go out and sell it again. How does Natalie keep that from happening? Now she files it. Exactly. You go to the county in which the land is located and you file it, what we say, of record. It's filed of record, and there are deed records, there are deed of trust records. And you go down and you file it of record. And actually, in this case, the title company will take care of that for Natalie. And in most instances, it will take care of you, whether it's a commercial or a personal arrangement. Now, Natalie has perfected her security interest against everybody in the world. So if Andrew goes out and buys it, let's say if Andrew goes out and sells it again, which would be fraud, right? He sells it to Ian and without trying to pay off the note, right? You're trying to sell it, that would be fraud. And Ian says, remember I gave you the example of somebody paying $50,000 for a $100,000 piece of property? They go, yeah, that sounds great. But who wins? Who's the battle against? The battle is between Ian and Natalie, right? Well, if Natalie doesn't file of record, who owns the land? Ian does. If she files it of record, who owns the land? Natalie does. And here's why that's so important. If it's not filed of record, and Ian gets the land as opposed to Natalie, how can Natalie get her money back? The only way is to sue Andrew, and he's gone, right? He's taken the money and skedaddled. You've got to track him down. There's no way you're going to get that dough. He's in Vegas. Now, on the flip side, if Ian pays the money if she does file it, and Ian pays it without checking the records, he's out the money and out the land, right? Because Natalie gets it. This is called creditor's rights. And the timing of things is important. But I just want you to have a pretty fundamental understanding of how you protect your security interest and when you borrow money, right? We call it creditor's rights because who's the creditor? The creditor is the person or organization that loans the money. In this instance, Andrew is the debtor. You've got creditors, you've got debtors. Hopefully in your lifetime you'll always be a creditor. But lots of people borrow money to get started in business, to buy a home, and you have to understand how all this works. Now, let's bring it home to you. Stephanie's been working for the Pappas Company for years, and now she wants to open her own restaurant. Right? So Stephanie decides to open her own restaurant, and let's say that Matthew is the landlord. You with me so far? All right, so Matthew's the landlord. So she's not buying real estate. She is leasing space from Matthew's strip center. Everybody good? What's the document that establishes the relationship between Matthew and Stephanie? A lease. It can be for 1 year, 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever it is, right? How are leases? How much rent is Stephanie going to pay Matthew? Did you guys? What's the matter with you? You didn't do your drugs today? Come on. What is it? You could do a fixed amount every month. That's what you guys do in your apartments, right? You pay a set amount every month. But in commercial leases, is that the way it's done today? Okay, let's step back so everybody's clear about this. This is important. When you pay that fixed amount every month for the apartment that you live in, what does that cover for you? Nah. It might if utilities are included, but that's rare today. How many of you have a utilities included lease? What do you live in the dorm or something? All right, that's rare, right? The rest of you pay your rent and your utilities. Forget utilities. In a commercial lease, those are going to be separate. What are your utilities? Water, gas, electric, internet, Wi-Fi, exactly. Those are utilities today. It's important. All right, but here's the other thing. This is the part I want you to get to. When you lease something from somebody, the landlord Your residential situation typically pays your property taxes on the value of the land. And what else? They also pay the insurance. When you pay rent, do you also pay insurance? You can get a renter's policy that covers your contents. But are you paying insurance for the building if Harvey comes in and wipes it out? No. Who's paying for that? The landlord. And what about the common area maintenance? CAM. What is CAM? Common area maintenance. When you rent an apartment, do you get access to the parking lot? Do you get access to the gym? Do you get access to the business center if they have one? The little grass area to walk little Harvey the dog? Yeah, you get access to all that. And who maintains that? The landlord. You don't pay extra for those things in typically a residential lease. Right, Jill? They're all in there together. That's called a gross lease. You pay one amount that includes taxes, insurance, common area maintenance. That's called a gross lease. What do you got, young man?
Oh, I'm a leasing agent.
Yeah.
So we charge for pets, we charge for all those services. If you want a special parking spot, we'll pay them.
Yeah, you're upselling. I get all that, but that doesn't change the fact that it's a gross lease for those three items that I just mentioned to you. Is that fair? Okay. Now, let's shift gears, though, and let's go back to Stephanie renting from Matthew for commercial space in a shopping center or a building. Almost always today, commercial landlords are going to enter into what's known as triple net leases. Triple net. So Stephanie's going to agree to pay a certain amount of money a month to Matthew, plus. What are the pluses? How many of you have been involved in a meeting contract? Oh, that was a bad example then. Okay. Plus. What would the three pluses be? What did we just talk about? Dude, we just had this conversation. Hold on to that thought. Plus. Thank you. Taxes, insurance, common area maintenance. Utilities are exactly right, but that's not part of the lease because utilities are always paid by the tenant in commercial transactions. 99.9% of the time. Right? So Stephanie has to factor in. Now, how much of the taxes and insurance and common area maintenance does she have to pay? If she's in a strip center, strike that. If she's in a standalone building, she'll pay all of it. She'll pay the property taxes on the whole building and land. She'll pay the common area maintenance. She'll have to take care of the landscaping, the parking lot. And she'll take care of the insurance on the building. That's typically the way it works. But if she's in a shopping center, and the shopping center has 100,000 square feet of total rentable space, in addition to the parking area and the greenery, right? And she has 10,000 of the 100,000 feet, then she will pay 10% of the common area maintenance, 10% of the security, that's part of the common area maintenance. She'll pay 10% of the property taxes assessed against the whole center. She'll pay 10% of the insurance for the whole center. Now, in addition, she'll pay insurance for what? Her property, which is all, what kind of property? Personal property, tables, chairs, furniture, right? Equipment that you install to open your restaurant. Do you see how that works? Now let me muddy the waters for you a little bit more. Now, Matthew has been renting space to restaurants and bars. And Matthew's getting, say, $6,000 a month from Stephanie for 10,000 square feet. But Matthew sees a line out Stephanie's door every lunch and every dinner and late at night. And Matthew thinks what if you're the landlord? I need a little piece of this action. So Stephanie, I'm going to rent to you $6,000 a month versus, I got to think of where it's going to come out right, versus 10% of your gross sales. It's always gross sales. It's never net revenue. It's always gross sales because you don't want to get into figuring out what goes deducted to get your net revenue. Versus 10% of your gross sales. So $6,000 a month. When does Stephanie start paying a percentage rent? When her sales per month reach what? Say it. 60,000. Right? 10% of her gross sales. So when her sales reach anything over 60,000, Stephanie has to do what to Matthew? Pay more rent. You got to pay you're giving him 10% over $60,000 because if she only does 40,000 in sales, does she only give Matthew 4,000? No, she gives Matthew 6. That's the minimum rent, right? 72,000 a year is the minimum rent. You see 72? 6,000 a month times 12, 72,000. That's the minimum rent she's guaranteeing. When she exceeds 60,000 a month, she has to pay more, the 10% of every dollar over 60,000 to Matthew, right? That's called a percentage lease. Almost every commercial lease today is percentage rent when it comes to retail, restaurants, bars, things like that. Too much too soon? Too early in the morning? Are you good with that? Are you sure? Good, because I got one more step in the process. Now, Stephanie has borrowed money from her parents, her friends, GoFundMe, and she's ready to open, but she's run out of money. And she needs an ice machine. What are her options? Because she doesn't have any money. Cindy says, then go to a bank. You can go to a bank. That's one option. I can go to the bank to borrow the money. I could get the vendor to self-finance, right? The vendor may allow Stephanie to pay it out over time, right? Exactly. We could do that. So either one of those situations, who's the creditor? The bank or the vendor, right? The seller of the ice machine. Very good. Now, if you're the seller or the lender, what do you want to do? Say it out loud. One more time. A promissory note. Yeah, you want Stephanie to promise what? To pay back the value of the ice machine, right? So you're going to do a bill of sale along with a promissory note because she's not paying in full for this, right? And then what's the last thing you want to do as the creditor? Perfect your security interest in what? The ice machine, right? So that Stephanie doesn't sell it to somebody else. Now, hold on to this thought. Because here's the thing. What's the cleanest way to perfect your security interest? Just like Chris did with the watch. What would it be? Hang on to it until what? Until she pays it off. But that doesn't work for her, right? Because why? She needs the ice machine to run the business. And we can't take it back and forth every day. That's not going to work, right? So the ice machine needs to be on the premises. But wait! Matthew's the landlord. Didn't Stephanie sign a lease with Matthew and promise to pay him rent? Well, what guarantees that? Well, she's open for business, but Matthew doesn't know how good an operator Stephanie is. Yeah, maybe she's done this before. She's got a history with Papa's, but she's on her own. How do we know Stephanie's taqueria is going to be as good as Papa's? No offense. What does Matthew want to do? How does Matthew secure? Because isn't a lease a debt? It's a debt. It's a promissory note that you're paying. It's just called a lease. And you're agreeing to pay so much money per month for so many years. You do the same thing when you sign your apartment lease. How does Matthew perfect his security interest in Stephanie's promise to pay in the lease? He'll ask Stephanie to personally guarantee the lease, right? Which is like Andrew signing the promissory note to Natalie. What else does he do? What's the collateral? Chris?
So in residential, sometimes they'll require you to do like the first and last month's rent. Do they do the same thing in commercial?
They do that.
Or possibly get you to pay like 6 months in advance.
Sometimes they do that, but they're more interested in that personal guarantee. That's why they're going to do a big credit check on you, and they're going to make sure you have it, right? And they can do things like you just talked about. But every landlord in the United States, once a lease is signed, whether it's residential or commercial, has an automatic lien against what? All the personal property and fixtures that go into their space. The minute it goes into their space, they have a lien against it, so that if you don't pay, they can do what? They can sell it to try to get their money back. Now, the dirty little secret that landlords don't realize is used restaurant equipment is worth about 10 cents on the dollar. Do you understand what I mean? If Stephanie paid $250,000 to install it, it's probably going to be worth $25,000 when you take it out. I bought a whole Denny's one time for $2,500. Cost me more to get it out than it did to own it, right? But that's important. Why is that important from the vendor or the lender's perspective on the ice machine?
Because if they owe a note on the ice machine and then they don't pay their lease, then that means the landlord's going to want the ice machine.
That's exactly right. And who gets it? The landlord gets it because the landlord has the space and the automatic landlord's lien is prioritized over anybody else's claim, right? So if you are Cindy or Ron and you're the vendor or the lender on the ice machine to Stephanie, what are you going to insist that Stephanie brings to you before you loan her the money for the ice machine? A what? Collateral, copy of the lease. The collateral is the ice machine. But how do I make sure I can get my ice machine back ahead of Matthew? I get Matthew to waive his right to the ice machine. Now, if you're the landlord, why would you waive your right to an ice machine? To the lien on an ice machine to secure your debt, your lease. If you don't, she's not going to open for business. And you're not going to get any rent. Right? And that's the way it works. Stephanie goes to Matthew and says, hey man, I got to borrow the money against this ice machine, but they won't lend me the money unless you exempt the ice machine from your landlord's lien. And Matthew, being a business person, says, I get it. I hate to hear that you don't have any dough, but okay. And it's a little document that says waiver of landlord's lien. You describe the ice machine, right? Matthew waives it, and off it goes. Now, let's say the ice machine was $10,000, and it's 6 months into the deal, and Stephanie's been paying $1,000 a month on that ice machine, right? So she's only got $4,000 left. She's paid 6 months, $6,000. She's got $4,000 left to pay, and she goes broke. Cindy and Ron, or whoever, whichever one, they're going to come in and do what? They want the ice machine, right? Because they're going to sell it to do what? Get paid back. Now, when they sell it, Let's say they get $6,000 for it, but they're only owed $4,000. Who gets the other $2,000? The landlord gets the other $2,000, right? You see how it works? So as the claim by the lender or the vendor diminishes, the landlord steps back into their role. You get it? Make sense? Happens all the time. You got to have a fundamental understanding of this. Okay, there's one more piece of this. Yikes. Ready? We've perfected personal property that we can take possession of. We've perfected our security interest in land that doesn't move. We know that the landlord has a lien, just like an innkeeper has a lien against anything you take into the hotel room. If you owe the landlord the innkeeper, and you don't pay, what can the innkeeper do? Take your stuff. Sell it. Now, in addition to the waiver of the landlord's lien, what else would Ron or Cindy want to do? Because right now, the waiver perfects their security interest against whom? Against the landlord. Exactly. Just against Matthew. But if they want to perfect it against the whole world, in other words, to keep Stephanie from selling it out the back door to somebody to raise quick cash, what do? They file it of record. And this is called the Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC. If you read the chapter, you saw reference to that. You probably saw reference to that back in the contracts chapter, but I saved it for now. The Uniform Commercial Code is a law that all states, it's a uniform code that all states have agreed to. It's like a treaty. Back in the day, 100 years before you were born, sales in between states was very difficult because the laws were all different. Somebody figured out, wait, let's all sit down and figure out a uniform method so sales, interstate commerce can occur easily. So we have warranties, we have shipping rules, right? We have delivery rules, we have consumer protection, all built into the Uniform Commercial Code. And one of the other things they built into it is the sale of personal property and the perfecting of security interest in personal property. So if I lend money, Ron lends money to Stephanie for that ice machine, they need to get the waiver of the landlord's lien, plus he would want to file that in the UCC records. It's called a financing statement, and it just says on it, it identifies the ice machine by the serial number, make, model, and serial number. It says how much the debt is for, and he files it in the county clerk's records of the Uniform Commercial Code or financing statement records, so that if you want to go buy an ice machine from Stephanie, what do you need to do before you go pay her the money for the ice machine? You check the records to be sure nobody has a prior claim against the ice machine. If you don't do that, and you move the ice machine to your restaurant, what's Ron going to do in about a week when he figures out the ice machine is gone? He's going to track it down, assuming he can. He's going to track it down, and he's going to do what? He's going to bring a moving van in, and he's going to grab the ice machine. And you're going to say, what? Wait, I paid her $3,000 for that. He goes, right. Get in line, dude. If he's got it filed. If he doesn't have it filed, and she sells it out the back door, Matthew's going to be pissed. But who's going to own the ice machine? I'm going to get it, right? Because you didn't do your due diligence and file it of record. All right, real quick. How do we evidence real property title in the United States? What's the document? A deed. Very good. Right? And it's called a warranty deed is what you're looking for, where somebody guarantees that you have the title that nobody else has a claim. Yeah? When we lease, When you lease a residential lease, what type of lease is that? A gross lease or a triple net lease? Gross lease. When you rent commercially, gross lease or triple net? Triple net. What does triple net mean? Taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance. You've got to pay extra for that. Do you understand what a percentage rent arrangement means? Everybody get that? How do I perfect my security interest with personal property? I hold it or file it of record in which records? County Uniform Commercial Code records, right? It's a financing statement. Now, when Stephanie pays off the ice machine, what does she insist Ron does? He files a release to demonstrate that it's been paid off and there's no claim. How do we evidence Andrew's debt to Natalie? How does she perfect her security interest in the land that Andrew bought?
I put my interest on the deed or the title.
The deed of trust. He signs over the deed in trust to you, and you do what with that document? File it of record. Perfects her security interest against everybody in the world. Everybody's now on notice. They know if they want to buy land from Andrew, they got to go down to the county deed records and look and see if there's a deed of trust on the description of his property. That's how the world works in real estate in the United States. Got it? Everybody? All right. Hope you never get screwed on a real estate deal. All right, good luck. I'll see you Tuesday on Chapter 7. Good discussion. Thank you.